Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Fired Up. My name's Morgan McLintic, and today we're going to be talking about how to build a CEO's personal brand. There's so much content being created at the moment, assisted by AI, that having an authentic personal brand built by your senior leaders, perhaps your CEO, is more important than ever. But how does a CEO go about deciding what their personal brand even is? And what are the steps they need to take to start building it? Sure, LinkedIn, but how do you go about standing out, moving into video? There are some best practices there, but what are they? And then once you're on stage, there are even different presentation techniques there. So today I'm joined by Loreta Tarozaite, who is the founder of a strategic advisory called Loreta Today, and she is an expert in personal branding and communications for senior executives. So she'll be telling us some of the techniques that she uses as she coaches CEOs about building their personal brand and establishing their executive visibility. So please join me in welcoming Loreta to Fired Up. Loreta, hi. Great to meet you. Welcome to Fired Up.
Hi. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Morgan.
So today we're going to be talking about building the personal brand for the CEO. And of course, that's increasingly important these days. And you're an expert in that. And so just at the top here, I wanted to just ask, when we talk about personal brand, you hear that phrase a bit. What does that really mean to you?
Personal brand to me specifically, and how I look at things, is the extension of the sort of professional presence, right? It's your values, it's what drives you, who you are as a person, what kind of characteristics, and how that translates into how you do business. That's what I think personal brand is. So it's a little bit of that intersection and line that connects to the professional world.
We're promoting the CEO. Like, why is it important for them to have a personal brand? And if I'm working with a startup, why should they prioritize building out the personal brand for their CEO and their executive leaders?
Let's talk about the startup community. And the founders would know whenever they go campaigning for funds, the first thing the investors would look at LinkedIn, would look what they've done. Have there been any published articles about this founder? What do they talk about online? Do they look professional, or do they look like they always constantly get in trouble and may cause risk into their investments? That personal brand build for the startup founders especially is very important. And the different tiers goes kind of in different stages of startup as well, right? The important tiers, that is. Meaning, when you're an early founder, you're writing in your garage, in your home office, wherever you are, in the WeWork, shared space, trying to build a product, right? So at that point, you're not really thinking about your personal brand because you haven't even started funding. You're still in this idea generation, right? So you're consuming maybe other people's content to learn more and to be that founder, that entrepreneur, to learn from others' mistakes, right? So in that stage, personal brand, in my opinion, is not as important. When it becomes important, there's two levels, subsequent levels. It's when they start campaigning. So they need to get the funds raised, A series, B series, whatever series, or even angel sometimes. But angel normally intends being from family and friends. So they already know you. But if you go on an official campaigning tour, so to say, you have to start thinking, what will the investors look for in you when you appear in front of them? And even before you step the foot in the door, what kind of information they will find about you? Do you have your Substack? Do you have your Medium account where you write articles and blogs or content about your product? Does your product have anything out there and what problems it solves? Any content around it? That ties to, how they represent themselves, like how they think, why they did, they came up with a solution, right? So they have to start building their own authority in the industry so that when the investors check them out, they have some type of initial assessment of you as a founder. So that's in the investment rounds. Now, as the company starts growing and scaling, let's assume it's Series B, C funding, for example. When the company starts scaling, that's where the transition starts happening. The founder and entrepreneur mindset has to start transitioning into CEO mindset. Now you're an official company leader. assuming you're still the founder and the leader before you get replaced. Sometimes you get replaced. But you have to start building a different kind of authority in the industry. You're now transitioning from this scrappy in the genes kind of thing, and personality into more authoritative. Now you have to seek opportunities, to be maybe a quoted expert in some articles. Maybe you're invited into podcasts. Seek those types of PR type of opportunities. Maybe write a article that's a contributed article into publications of the industry where you get exposed to your potential audiences, for example, or your authority is built upon the search, right? When people search, they can see everything that you've done so far. So it's slightly different way of then running the company, because you become this face of the organization, and people either will hate you or will admire you, depending what you project.
I think that's a great summary. And so, yeah, particularly at the early stage, the investment is in the team, and you as the sort of entrepreneur have to project, okay, the potential of that team. And I guess in a later stage, you're the face of the company and everything that the company represents. And so perhaps, for want of a better word, it becomes a little bit more corporate at that point. One issue for entrepreneurs, particularly at the beginning, I'm an engineer. This is the first time I'm founding my company. I realize this is part of my job to be the face of the company. Some people love it. Others are like, okay, this is a thing I need to do. But I have to define my personal brand. And how do I even go about that? It feels like a weighty decision. And I think people might feel a bit uncomfortable about doing it. But what are the steps involved?
And a lot of times people feel uncomfortable in doing it, because that's the biggest roadblock. We don't think about building that personal brand or that external authority until it becomes too late, unfortunately. So you think, oh, I have time, or for the most time, I don't have time either to do that. So it depends on the perspective. But the steps to take is what I always advise is just to start small. Don't start, producing video content. Because that's an elaborate thing to even tackle, even though video is one of the best, authority building tools. But you don't just jump into the dark waters and start swimming, trying to figure out, because it's going to overwhelm you, and you're not going to be able to feel these little accomplishments. Easiest way to do it is just to pick a platform where you think your audience hangs out, be it LinkedIn, Instagram, depending on the product, on the solution, whatever the case is. And start by posting small posts, just small ideas. What I do sometimes, a thought crosses my mind and I'm like, oh, that could be a good quote. And I just put an image with my quote underwritten Loreta, and that's my post sometimes. Simple as that. Because the goal, if let's say social platforms are not drivers of your personal brand engagement, it's more authority building platforms. You don't really need the post to be viral. You don't strive for that. You just want somebody to find you, to scan through your feed, to see what you're all about, how you think, what type of content you write, what type of content you like, and engage with yourself on those platforms, because it all algorithmically is displayed. And just start small. That's the only key advice I can give. Do not overwhelm yourself with big things. If you're at an event, for example, and learning something, just write something of some of your learnings. Take a picture or several pictures and just write a blurb. Why wasn't this amazing presentation? Here are the key takeaways. Boom. That's resonating with you. That somehow it's great if you can tie it to your solution, to your product or service that you're providing, because that, again, shows that you can see the value in the content and how that brings back your business into the mix as well. So simple things like that. Now, as you advance, then obviously video is always going to be, more and more is going to be more important, especially within the AI age, where a lot of things are becoming more fake and people will have to decipher, is this a real person talking, or is it an image of it generated through AI with lips moving and the voiceover? I'm the proponent of humanness in general. Yes, AI is great, but I'm the proponent of humanness when it comes to doing business with people. You just have to be human in that sense. Yeah, so the video is more like long-term goal if you're not comfortable. There's some founders are comfortable, they just jump straight into the video.
Yeah, and I want to talk about techniques for that, because I do think people find it very daunting to switch on the camera and the lights. And, of course, you've got a personal brand, whether you define it or not, right? So at this early stage, I'm posting a few things on LinkedIn maybe. Do I need to literally write down, okay, my personal brand is this. I'm going to be the challenger, or I'm going to be a real sort of thought leader in this, or I'm going to be the person with the acerbic take on all. Do they need to define it? Because I think going through that exercise helps you understand the type of content that you want to produce. And if you want people to understand your brand, you have to understand it first. But I feel like sort of sitting down and doing that can be hard for people. So what advice do you have for that?
It's important to define the goals for yourself. Let's say, by doing this, what am I anticipating to achieve? How will that help? What are the key expertise that I bring to the table that would be beneficial to the audiences I want to hear about, right? So have these content pillars as well. It's good to have not only technical content, but also soft type of communication or values-based type of content as well, intermixed, because that's, again, builds the broader picture of you as a founder or as a leader of the company. So having this definition in your head ahead of time of what your goals would be will definitely bring clarity in how do you want to pursue all these types of different types of messages that you want to deliver to people. So it is important to go through that step, in my opinion. Otherwise, it's going to be too much thinking of what to talk about because you're not sure where you're heading with it.
Yes. All right. So thinking about, all right, my goals are here and I've got particular themes. I'm going to talk about these sort of broad topics. One's technical, one's what it's like to run a startup, perhaps, maybe one's personal, the journey of an entrepreneur. These are the three sort of buckets, if you like, of content I'm going to produce. I've sort of decided my tone. I'm going to be approachable, or I'm going to be very visionary, or whatever it might be. Then it makes it easier than just dropping the thought of the day in which you've got a very ill-defined brand.
When we start thinking about being more present online, who you are in real life is important that it translates through building that presence online. So it's not like you sit down and decide what that should be, unless obviously you're aiming for virality and you want to be so controversial and you're going after that. Then yes, you almost have to fake it to be that. But as the founder of the company who is raising funds or who's growing into that CEO role, you want to be that person that people join, admire, trust, right? So whatever you put online, it has to translate based on who you are as a person. So you have to be authentic to you. How you talk, how you deliver the message. Are you talking in or writing in very lengthy, windy sentences, or are you more direct? I personally have gone recently through my own sort of brand voice and tone because I know how I communicate. I just needed to see it on paper. There's all these exercises that professional brand builders have, right? You have to invest into that. So I've gone through that exercise myself. And, we started it was an interesting exercise where she had a chart of a bunch of different words. I don't know how many, like 100, maybe 200 words. And there were 3 buckets where we had to put, okay, is this word really Loreta? Or is this word kind of Loreta? Or is this word like, heck no, this is not at all Loreta? And then generated this graph that thematically showed who it pretty much translated based on those words of choices where thematically I fit into my tone. Am I a translator of information? Am I a rule breaker? There were certain buckets. So it was a fascinating exercise to go through. I literally did it a couple of months ago because I'm doing more and more content. And I'm like, you know what? I need to define better how I myself talk because I'm good on video. But when I write, I feel like I sometimes lose that directness. Video is my medium. I can talk forever. But when I have to write, I feel like there's a block,
You need to be like, this doesn't sound like the person I've seen. So it
exactly.
needs to be cohesive. Oh, that sounds like a great exercise. If people are unsure, come up with a whole bunch of different types and then sort of put them into a bucket. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a very good exercise to go through, So that's about the tone. It has to be authentic to you. I, for example, use a lot of hands. You hear how I talk. People will get the same Loreta when they meet me. I don't mold video Loreta to something else. It's me. When it comes to thought of the day, sometimes those thoughts of the days could be really inspiring. And if you have a camera, a phone, just start recording them, even if you don't publish, either a voice message or yourself on a selfie, just record those thoughts because maybe down the road you will use them. Those thoughts of the day sometimes are like, oh, I had an awesome idea. And then I forgot about it. So it's good to capture them in the moment. People say when you dream something and you had like an idea in the dream, you just wake up and write down right away before it disappears. It's kind of similar, as you go about your day and you have this thought or idea, or you observed something and it sparked something in your brain that would be worthy of your opinion or your perspective, just capture that. And again, I'm advising voice or video just because I believe in that, but you can also write it down, whichever way works for you. But those are the two things that I would not avoid. They don't break the brand. They obviously complement to your personal brand because there's a reason why those thoughts came to you.
Those are genuine, and you might not be in front of might not be ready to share them, but capturing them I think is a good idea because you don't want to sit there and go, okay, now what am I going to say? You mentioned LinkedIn, and I think when people think about, okay, exec visibility, LinkedIn at the moment is a go-to. And let's just talk about that specifically. What should a CEO be doing there? And by that, I mean, should they be posting daily? Should they be commenting other people? Like, how much should they be doing?
Yeah, that's what we're going to, that scalability, right? What is your goal? Do you want to scale and attract business coming your way? Do you want to pull in people and that market share through your personal brand? Then, of course, you have to post a lot. You have to really have a very strong content strategy, understand the algorithms of LinkedIn, because it also depends when you post, what type of content you post. Again, I'm not an expert on all of that. There's experts who I work with. They're really strong in all of this backend stuff. But at the bare minimum is just have your picture there. Just have your picture there.
Right, yes, okay. This is something I think people can manage. Yeah.
That's good, professional. Even if it's not professionally taken, I would avoid using AI-based touch-ups and fake-looking pictures because it just gives a different vibe. Again, keep humanness at the forefront when you do that because people are not going to meet your avatar. They're going to meet you. So you don't want to look like you're 25 when actually you're 45, for example, right?
That could be a real photo. There are plenty of people on LinkedIn who are hanging on to that 25-year-old photo.
Again, another example from my experience. I recently did my personal brand photo shoot. I was probably one of the, maybe even the same, I will have to ask the photographer. I was probably one of the not so many people, maybe the only person who asked to leave some of my wrinkles in because they smoothed it out. That's too perfect. I don't look like that. I said, you have to leave some of me because I don't want people to get scared when they see me. It's like, she does not look like anything like in the photos she's sharing on social, So we were laughing because I said, it's funny, that I'm asking you to leave me in the photos. I don't want you to polish all of my things, from my face or my wardrobe. Don't smooth out the pants. I'm sitting. I mean, there's wrinkles naturally happening when you're sitting down. So, it's my methodology is real relating lens. So I always look from that lens. What's real, relatable? Because I don't like fakeness. I can pick up on the fakeness real quick and I know it doesn't connect. Realness is what connects, right? And in this AI world, there's now becoming more and more fake things that I think standing out as a human is going to be very important. Back to your question. I know it was.
This is good. So you've got to have a photo and it's got to be recent and authentic.
Yes.
I think the authenticity is important and people have got to be, have a presence there a little bit.
Don't keep the gray banner on LinkedIn that's, empty. Just put something either about the product or some sort of graphics with a slogan or a message, at least something, there, and a little bit of the biography. Now, one thing is important as well sometimes is to also grow slightly your audience. If you're not connected with your network from years and years, just start requesting those connections. Again, it's just a perception. It doesn't really influence your authority build. But when people do check out, for example, if somebody wants to connect it with me, I go in, I look at their profile, I look what they do. And if they have, let's say, 5 connections, to me, it's, maybe this is not real. Maybe this person is not real. So it kind of just reduces that red flag. So the more connections you have, the more exposure, obviously, to your content you will have. And it just builds, again, more authority about you as a person.
Right. I think that's important. And particularly if you're a founder of a company, those early sales are all going to be founder-led sales. And if I'm investing in your company, I'm going to want to know, people to sell to. And one of the metrics I'm going to use is, all right, what kind of audience? How many people are you connected to? Because that may suggest the potential there. You talked a little bit earlier about video, and video is just increasingly important. Yes, on LinkedIn, but YouTube everywhere. I think it can be intimidating. It isn't the place to start, you said. Okay, start small, but eventually your path is going to end up on video. So what advice do you have for execs who are sort of unfamiliar with video when they're just getting in front of a camera?
Yeah, one of the scariest part, I think, it's the logistics around it, right? Because people who don't know how to produce videos, they think it's, oh, there's too much going on I have to think about. But honestly, my setup is very simple. I have a ring light over here on my monitor. I have a good quality webcam that's mounted that records 4K video. And I have a good quality microphone. And that's my little setup when I do podcasts like this, when I have Zoom meetings. It's my little setup that doesn't require a lot of investments. I think it's like maybe $500 total investment that I have going on. But we also have these, we have phones. Just have a steady cam, external, not even external microphone. Actually, you can do quite good recordings even with your earbuds in. But just the important part with the phone is that it has to be steady. You don't want the video to start shaking. But that's also, a tool that one can use that's really simple. You don't need elaborate setups that we see these professional podcasters do or in TV studios. You don't have to have all these multiple angles because when you think about it, you're building your own personal brand, your own authority. You're a single person. So it's obvious that you don't have a studio where there's multiple people filming you from different angles and then cutting things together. So it can be very, very simple. And the crucial thing is lighting and audio. Those are the main things. Do not, let's say, start recording videos with a window behind you because then it's going to be causing the shadow. You're in the shadow. You have a backlight, right? Unless you have a very strong light that offsets and counters to your face. But try to pick a place where it's well lit or just have a ring light of sorts, mounted so that you are well lit and your audio is good. I think through COVID in general, with a lot of organic or social media overall, a lot of these organic type of videos have become more forgiving. People are not looking anymore for professionally looking productions. They're looking more for the message, for you, who you are. Can they relate to you? Do you resonate with them? How you talk? Do they want to follow you and learn more and more about what you do or learn from you? That's what people are looking for. They're looking for these again, back to humanness, real people, just like themselves, not the overly produced, conversation.
Yeah, that can feel like too much. So I do think that the production bar has come down a little bit. So for people doing a video podcast, which often for an exec might be the main thing that they're doing when they're on camera, it's more than a Zoom call, right? You need a professional microphone. You need lights more than you might do just doing an update meeting with customers. But it's less than a full studio where you've got multiple cameras and lights and makeup and the whole full bit. So I think often people worry about that.
And one thing actually to mention about Zoom, there's a lot of different video capture platforms like this one we're recording on, Riverside, right? I love Riverside. There's StreamYard. There's different webcams have their own recording tools that are compatible with them for quality capture. So from my personal experience, Zoom has the worst camera representation. whenever you're on Zoom and you're recording a conversation, it just never looks quality for whatever reason, which is interesting because they were one of the starting companies in this whole virtual world. So if you are getting serious and using video, I would also invest into subscription of some type of platform like Riverside or something else where, you get transcriptions of your content right away that you can repurpose into written content or blogs or newsletters, whatever the case is, however expansive you want to go with your content. But also, it can generate some of the snippets for you. And if you like them, they're ready to go. You don't have to put in any more time in producing it yourself. So it saves time when it comes to streamlining production. And there's obviously a lot of, like you mentioned earlier in the green room, a lot of other tools like Descript and Opus Clip that can add captions, add B-roll, all of these fancy little things. But I wouldn't go there just yet if you're starting. Just invest into a setup that you can use over time, experiment, and then grow into more complex layers.
Right. And these tools are, if you're deciding, hey, I'm going to have my own video podcast and host it, then I'm going to need all of these subscriptions. But for execs who are just, I'm a guest, that's the great thing about being a guest is they're going to do all the production and they're going to have all the subscriptions. You just have to show up. But you have to show up with a decent microphone and probably not your AirPods for recording it. And they work, but a little bit above what you would normally do for a Zoom call. Now, tell me, sort of typically what kind of mistakes do execs make when they're first going on to sort of camera?
Yeah. And not necessarily just camera in general. How do you behave, so to say, on the external platforms? Because you always have to think as a founder or as a leader, CEO of the company about the reputation management of your company, of your business, of your product, of your service, right? Because the impression you build online stays there for a long, long time. There's no way for you to take things down yourself unless you know somebody in Facebook or somebody in Google and ask them to take it down for you. The content stays there. So some of the things to be wary of: do not disclose secret company information, secret sauces so easily. Give tidbits of it, but do not share it so that the competition can know what you're doing. You always want to be a step ahead of your competition. So don't disclose sensitive information. And that goes abroad. That's already PR strategy we're talking about, right? Public relations. How do you manage the conversations with media, with bloggers, different events? Just have talking points of the messages you want to get across. And that's it. Whatever you think is going to help the company, no matter how the question is being asked, you always want to have those grounding messages, core messages that you always want to deliver, because that builds consistency and trust. So don't disclose sensitive information. Don't bash competitors, because that, again, puts you in a bad light and shows a little bit of that insecurity that you're shining by bashing others, and that's not a good look. Actually, when I'm not from United States originally, I'm from Lithuania. And I remember when I moved here 20 something years ago, I started watching TV, trying to get myself familiar with what's going on in TV world here in the United States, because that was my background. I was a TV news anchor back in Lithuania. One thing that had stood out to me then, and it still is, I'm still amazed by it. Every time I see an ad, how one car company is bashing another car company, or one phone company is bashing another phone company. And I'm like, how is this even allowed? Because in Europe, there's very strict laws. You can't really do that. And over here, you can, apparently. But from building your own personal brand authority, do not do that. Not a good look. Do not bash your competition. Do not talk negatively. Now, it depends on the sensitivity level, but I always advise to avoid engaging into political or religious conversations, because you don't want to be associated with any conflict-raising messages. So try to deflect the answers if somebody's asking you something, an opinion or whatever is going on, for example, in Gaza or in Ukraine. Just try to avoid those conversations unless you're an expert in it. Then of course you can talk to it. But normally we are not experts in it. And who knows who the expert is? We don't. Try to avoid these kinds of situations.
Yeah, we definitely advise that. Unless it's core to your mission and you're always going to be coming back to this topic, it's probably not worth just throwing out an opinion that may, maybe your whole company doesn't agree with, or you may regret later. So let's just talk a little bit about live presentation. We've been doing our stuff on camera. We're getting used to that. But CEOs have to do a lot of live presentations that, it might be on stage, but it just might be at the all hands. What advice do you give to senior execs when they're live on stage?
Let's define all hands as more internal focused and live on stage external focused, right? So let's say you're a speaker, keynote speaker at some conference, or you're invited to speak in some panel or something like that, right? So there's kind of two different applications in my view. When it comes to internal, let's take an example of a town hall. That all goes back to a little bit, I would say, higher tier company. The company has to be a little bit more advanced, because when this team is small, there's not a lot of all hands. It's like you're passing in the hall, you're brainstorming the ideas, and then you go and make it happen. When the team starts growing, the company starts growing, that's when the executive communications becomes important. So you have to reach now, instead of 5 employees, you have to reach 1,000 employees who need to hear from you the same message, the vision, believe in it. So you have to remember that. What I think in my experience, what was lacking when I was in corporate, in bigger organizations, is the executives tend to put a facade on. I'm the face of the company. I'm going into this town hall. Oh, we believe in you. You're so awesome. You're helping us drive this vision forward. 2 weeks later, 50% fired in a layoff. So just be real. Be transparent is what I always advise. No matter how difficult the truth is, sometimes being transparent wins in the long run. You don't want to hide the truth. So when it comes to internal communication strategy, be real. And that obviously translates into external presentations as well. But for internal, it's very important, because you've grown the company, you're building something awesome with the people who you hired, not you, but different departments, obviously. And they're helping you get to the revenue levels that you want them to get. So that appreciation has to come from the heart. It's not just words on paper. when sometimes it happens, from PR perspective. We just have to say these things because we can't say more. We just have to say these for political reasons. And sometimes it's important to not disclose everything, but you have to resonate with people who are listening to your message.
So you have to be genuine in front of your I think you have to be genuine all the time, but you have to be genuine in front of your team so that they don't feel that there's this sort of cold, dispassionate leader in front of us. That's not very engaging. But when I'm on stage in front of I'm at my customer event, what are some tips for that?
It depends on the structure, but in general, stage presence is very different than on-camera presence. So in stage, you have to tell not an exciting, but a story that resonates, that makes people perk up their ears, and that represents you and your company by extension in a good light. But you also have to be really good at filling in the stage and through your voice and tone and hand gestures, engaging people through pauses. Sometimes people are afraid to pause, but pauses are these moments of, oh, I have to think about what he or she just said, the audience, right? And then you intersect with something else. Now, if your personality is, for example, to be playful or have humor inserts, use that. Just don't use the slides as your script. Use slides as your inspiration to the audience. Just clear, simple message per slide. Key points you want to deliver. Your delivery is in your voice. That's the biggest difference. Sometimes, especially technical founders, deep engineering founders, they just rely on the words on the screen because obviously they're not trained well to be public speakers. I mean, you have to get to that point. So it's a lot of things going on when you're on stage or on camera. How am I being perceived? What are people thinking about me? You think about whether there's a thinking versus who you are and what you want to deliver, right? What value do you bring to your audience through your message? So that would be the difference with external presence. Obviously, you have to stay authentic and you have to be real, no matter which platform you use, video, internal, external communication. You still have to be that same one person and not three faces of person.
We often sort of say it's not just what you say, it's how you say it, because people will pick up on how you're conveying this message as much, if not more than the words that you're saying. And so sort of believing in what you're saying and being energetic and varying the pace, as you just said, I think is a great piece of advice because people just often get out there and just hammer through the slides. And
that hammering through the slides comes from the stress. It's like, oh my God, I just want to get over with. It just doesn't matter how I deliver. Oof, okay, it's done. I'm off the stage right now. Now I can go have a drink. So that comes with a stress. And the more you speak, the more you practice, the more you participate in these things, the better you become. I have to say, I don't even know how good of a stage speaker I would be. My medium is video. I've done some, but I can't lie. There's that little tickle in my heart thinking, am I doing it right? But the benefit is that I understand the visual communications, aspect. So I know what to think about it. And I go with that intention that people don't know my full content. They don't know my message. They will know whatever I, in that moment, deliver. And if I forget something, they will not know that I forgot something. So it's more about, your presence, how you stand, how you walk in, what you're wearing, how you're owning the stage, how you're scanning through the room. Those are the visual cues, that make you be that, oh, they're really good. You sometimes don't even hear the message. I should say, sometimes don't even hear the message because I'm admiring how good they are on stage, and how awesome the slides look like. I was recently in a Gartner conference for CMOs, and obviously it's a very well put event. And several keynotes. There was a theme to the event. As a visual storyteller, as a communicator, as somebody who helps other brands communicate better, I was paying attention. Okay, oh my God, these slides look awesome. Oh, and this presentation now ties to the keynote that I was saying. They did a very good job in tying it all together. These pillars of the content and the message that they wanted to convey to the attendees. It's just that theme was carried over and the slides were amazing. It was like simple message. That's it. And highly produced content. I could tell that it was highly thought through slide where it's not you and I sitting there and doing a PowerPoint. There had to be some creative thinking how to translate a complex message into really simple visual. That's art. So that's important. But those, again, very, very high level conferences. We're going to graduate to that point at some time.
I think that's really important. And just as we wrap this section, as we're building sort of the profile of the CEO, is there any final advice here that you'd like to share?
Do not feel the pressure to do something. If it doesn't feel right for you, just don't do it. You have to really be comfortable with yourself, and committed actually, which is very important. You can't just post 5 posts and then disappear out of the blue. Once you commit, you have to continue. And over time, that will pay off. Even if it's once per week, that's how I just do once per week something. I don't do 5 posts like others per week. It's too much. So my goal personally was, okay, just build the presence, just share the knowledge, have people when they look me up, if they want to invite me or speak or talk to me, they at least know what I'm all about. They know my energy. They see how I communicate, and they see the content types I talk about. And just posting once per week, rotating the days of the week is totally enough. But if you're not comfortable even starting there, just don't do it. Wait for that inner voice to tell you that it's the right time. As a company grows, sometimes there are executive communication teams or social teams who help you with that, right? So it's not necessarily you doing it all the time. It's your teams on your behalf writing content for you in your voice.
Oh, absolutely. So Loreta Tarozaite is the founder of strategic advisory Loreta Today. Loreta, thanks so much for joining us here on Fired Up. If people want to get in touch with you, where should they go?
Thank you, Morgan. I'm always on LinkedIn. So if you find me on LinkedIn, would reference this podcast and I will accept the connection. Also my website, loreta.today. So I'm there as well.
Okay, great. And we'll put those details in the show notes. Loreta, thanks for your time. Really great talking to you today. And I really enjoyed that. Lots of great advice. And we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Morgan.
All right. Take care.